from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, I have a lot of special guests with me, and we're going to be talking about the influence of gangster rap on black violence. Has it been a positive, and is it expressing the things that blacks are experiencing in marginalized communities, or has it been a major contributor to the black violence that we have seen rise since the 1980s? Stay tuned.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and it is a pleasure to be with you on today. I have several special guests with me today as we are going to talk about the issue of the impact that particularly gangster rap has had on the issue of black violence. And this has been a controversial conversation that we're having within the black community about the impact of gangster rap, particularly starting in the 1980s. And there was a correlation, many experts believe, between the rise in black violence and what we call the genre gangster rap and its impact on the black community. Have several special guests with me in the studio. I have one on the way. I have with me Terry Cameron, and Terry comes from the perspective of once being out there in the streets and involved in his perspective on this whole issue. I have another person with me, John Hall, who is the former deputy mayor of Indianapolis under Mayor Steve Goldsmith. Yes. John Hall was there when we had a record-breaking year and 10 Point was started. And then we also have with us Annette Johnson. Annette Johnson is from Indianapolis also, and she is the Pike Township trustee. And we wanted to get a variety of perspectives on this issue of black violence and the influence on it by gangster rap. And I was reading some things, this week, and it was talking about there's a noticeable increase in black violence, since the rise of gangster rap in the late 1990s, leading some to believe that there might be a connection between the rise in black violence, particularly among young men of color. There are others, though, who say that rap music has been recognized for its positive impact, such as its ability to raise awareness about social injustices and empowering the marginalized communities across the country. So you have those various, viewpoints within the black community. Now, even though there are some who do see a correlation between gangster rap and the rise in black violence, particularly among young black males, they do recognize that the issue of black-on-black violence is a complex issue, and there are a lot of issues that are leading to it. Some are social, some are economic, and certainly some are historical factors that some believe are all contributing to the rise in this black-on-black violence. But I wanted to talk about it because this has been an issue that the church has been struggling with too. This whole issue of gangster rap music, and part of what it promotes is not just the use of violence against one another, but drugs and misogyny. Some believe it promotes a disrespect of women. So a lot of things are going on, and the church has really struggled too in how to address this issue. Some black pastors have been very critical of it and believe it's the devil's music, and others have been more cautious about how they view this issue of gangster rap, and they're not talking about all rap, but particularly gangster rap. What has been the influence of gangster rap on black violence going back to the 1980s? So we've really been dealing with the issue that has plagued the black community since the 1970s, but certainly in the 1980s and 90s, we saw the height of it in America. So want to kind of start this conversation off today, and get your perspectives on, from your perspective, what role has gangster rap had on black violence, if any, from your perspective? So, Terry, I'm interested in your perspective. First, what you think, because as you shared, that you were out there, and he was involved. I'm interested. Did it influence what you were doing out there? Did you see it influencing other people who were kind of out there in the game too when you were involved?
First of all, good morning, Pastor, or good afternoon, and his guests. I'm not going to put that label on gangster rap,
okay,
or any type of rap music. There's two sides to everything, and the perspective that I have on it is my personal opinion.
Okay.
It's not of nobody else's. But we take things and we take labels and put it on, especially black influences like music, entertainment, TV, pastors. People will say what they want to say. It's the perspective that we take in the music. If you rap about killing and raping women and disrespecting black women and all that, hey, if you listen to that, yes, it's going to have an influence on you. I'm not the type of person that you can just say anything to me and I take it and run with it.
Right.
And a lot of brothers that I growed up with, we have an opinion about what other people say about us. Rap music has its own entity and it influences people. It can influence you positively or it can influence you negatively. It's your perspective, how you take what they are saying and run with it. I don't take if I came to your church, Pastor, I like what you preached about.
Right.
I liked your preaching. Everybody can't preach to me.
Right.
You can preach to me because you are telling the truth, and the way that you are drawing the picture for me to see the truth, that's how I take it. I can understand you. And that's how I consider rap music or gangster rap at the time. It didn't have no influence on me.
Okay.
Because I took the negative out of it. And if the music appealed to me, I listened to the music. I wouldn't listen to nothing what nobody else was saying because I'm not gonna let somebody else say that influences me to do something negative. Or if you're saying something positive, I could take that and run with it.
Annette, what is your perspective on it? We just heard from Terry. What's your perspective on it? Gangster rap, and has it had a negative influence on our community that has caused a rise in black-on-black violence since the 1980s?
Again, good afternoon, everybody, and to the guests. And such a good question. I mean, I guess I look at it in two folds. I kind of look at it what the gentleman just kind of shared with, depending on your mindset. Mm-hmm. I think that's how the rap music, to me, would affect you. The mindset. What are you out there doing? What is your lifestyle about? How are you living? So we see a lot of our young adults. They like things to be glorified, and so I think sometimes rap has a negative response on them because they want to do and to me emulate what they see. A lot of people around that age group, they like to emulate what they see because it's cool and it's wonderful, and so they emulate unless they have some, I would say, guidance from their parents. Teens tend to go follow the crowd, want to be in the in crowd. So right. I would say, to me, some of the things I hear, some of the language that these young people use, because where do they get that, the language from? Unless just in your household. My parents didn't speak like that, so I wouldn't have gotten it from there.
Right.
Once I'm around my friends and they influence me and I see them doing these types of things, then you kind of emulate that type of behavior.
John, what do you think? What's your perspective on it? And certainly, you served in a position, as deputy mayor of Indianapolis when I came to Indianapolis in the 1990s. So the city certainly had to deal with the issue of the rise in violence, and particularly how it disproportionately impacted really the black community more so than any other in this city.
Well, Pastor, I've got two sons. My youngest son, Stephen, other than his business that he runs, he and his wife, music is his deep love. Okay. And so he has been in punk rock and metal and he's good. So his view is more to what Terry and Annette are saying, that one, it's an art form and it's an expression form. And I hear him. I hear him say that. My oldest son is saying this is how we relate to what's going on in our area. If we talk poverty, if we're talking crime, it's what we're seeing. Maybe we're living in the projects and we see all of this, drug selling, women being beaten, da-da-da. And so that's what we say. But my little snippet is roughly 40% of youth feel depressed. 60% of hip-hop music is purchased by European Americans. 20% of youth nationwide think about committing suicide. 10% say they've tried it. Where is all of this confusion and lack of sensibility, where is it rooted in? To me, it's rooting in this culture of music that denigrates women, that uplifts thug life, that says this is the way. They amplify that this could be the way you ought to live, rather than doing the formula of blacks for hundreds of years of getting skilled up, of working, of finding a partner that's skilled up, and moving up to another bracket of life. So to me, it impacts because Twitter, TikTok, X, with their algorithms, can put this in youth over and over and over again. Now, if you're like Terry, you may be strong enough to determine, to discern what's good and bad. But if you're coming up in a household that's low income, parents have no clue, parents aren't around, who's going to say that you won't grab onto this lifestyle? Because it is rough out here. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy path up. But that's my view. So that it has damaged the thoughts of youth. Not all youth. Terry and Annette are both pointing that out. But when you are in a area where the parenting is not adequate, not enough, fathers aren't around, mothers are working, or mothers are not engaged, yes, I think it has damaged our viewpoint. And I think you see it in our society where lying is okay. Beating women is good. Drugs is cool. Not that, I've never done drugs, but I've never done drugs that I shouldn't have had to. But that's a joke, audience. Yeah. That's a joke. But Pastor, that's my view.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison. And my guess, we're talking about the whole issue of the impact of particularly what we call gangster rap on the black community, and has it contributed since the 1980s in the rise of black on black violence, which, and I know Terry's getting ready to jump in here. The numbers are showing that black America is 13% of the American population, but every year we represent 50% or more of the homicide victims. So it's disproportionately, we're being impacted by the violence. And the question becomes, what's driving that black America is killing at such a high rate? Terry, I know you want to get in here.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on what the deputy mayor here had said, and parenting, because that's where kids learn first at. The language that they hear from their parents, and they repeat it, because this is okay. My mama used the F word, and my daddy slapped my mama, and those things. But as a individual, I know to go out my grandmother's door and to snatch an old lady's pocketbook, I know that that's personally wrong.
Right.
My personal feelings telling me that this is not right. And I have a decision to make right then and there, even though I've seen it in my household.
Right.
I've experienced it up close and personal.
Right.
I know personally that this is wrong. I'm not going to go out there and snatch no white woman or no black woman's pocketbook because, man, look at my grandma. I'm looking at my grandmother. I'm not going to go out here and use the type of language that this is just my personal opinion. But look at all the other entities that compounds with gangster rap. Poverty. Kids go to school without even eating breakfast. What they gonna concentrate on how to get me a bologna sandwich in my belly so I can concentrate on at least getting me an education.
Right.
You got all these other things, man, that compound. So we're gonna stick gangster rap out there as the number one. We're gonna put that label on there. Then look at what those people are doing to each other. So is it coming from gangster rap? No, it's coming from all the other things that add on to gangster rap. Gangster rap is just speaking on it.
So the gangster rap, and Annette, he raises a question. Gangster rap is speaking about the reality of what people are experiencing from when they talk about the disrespect of women, that is what they're seeing in the household, or their mother being a victim of domestic violence, on and on, the drug trafficking, or, the level of violence that they're growing up seeing. Let's have a conversation about that. And if that is true, then does it also have an impact on the kids that listen to it on a regular basis? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, such a good question again, because you just pinpointed it. I was reading this article, and it says some people don't have an issue with the rap music because it expresses emotion and life stories, which is what we just shared here.
Right.
However, we have to be mindful because what you're expressing, what you're sharing, young minds pick that up, and that's what leads to the destructive behavior. That's what leads to the types of things that they do because, again, they're emulating what they see. You say, oh, this is just an artist doing this, but these young adults, young people, they look up to these artists like they are just, the best person in the world, or I have to mimic my life like this particular person is. I mean, we when we were young, we had different people that we was our favorite person, our music person, but again, it's just the lyrics, and now you have the videos and things, so you actually get to see them in action doing all this type of destructive type behavior. And again, our young people, to me, are just kind of latching onto that. They ride around in the cars. They want to play the loud music. They want to run up on someone. They want to act out in different ways. I mean, we see it as they gather with their gatherings and things. Nothing is just like fun. It's just the behavior is always leading to something destructive or some type of violence.
You know, what really got me to think about this topic more seriously is a letter that I received from a young man in prison who had been sentenced to 183 years, I think it was the sentence, for a murder that he had committed in a music studio. And he had been watching me on, TV and the work that I do with 10 Point, and I'm always out there, talking about this issue of what I call it urban violence. And in the letter, he wrote to me that we needed to go about addressing the issue differently. And he was offering suggestions. And he said to me in his letter that he wrote that he grew up in a middle-class home. And he had a stepfather that had a very good job. His mother had a good job. They raised him right. But what he said to me was he chose a different path. And maybe what Terry's talking about is true, that his life was influenced more by the rap videos. So he was trying to live out what he was seeing, in the rap videos, that led him down the path that ultimately caused him to be sentenced for the rest of his life to prison because of murder and attempted murder. So he was convicted of murder and convicted of attempted murder. So I began to think in terms of, how do we as a community address this issue? Because I know there are different perspectives on this issue, about what role does it play, not negating all the other factors that are contributing to it, like poverty and how kids are being raised and brought up in the home, issues of hunger, fatherlessness, you go on, if and what they are seeing and experiencing it, and they're singing about it and living it out. How do we make sense of this as a community, John? And how do we, really address this? Because particularly my son, my youngest son, well, my oldest son, he raps. He's a rapper, but he doesn't do gangster rap, but he raps. And he does well at it. My youngest son listens to it. Sometimes I have to go in the room when I hear words that shouldn't be, edified in the pastor's house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I know that influences him. And he likes it. And so the challenge is, particularly from the church's perspective, how do we address this issue when maybe young people see this differently than someone my age sees it? So your perspective on that. Then we get to you, Terry.
that is another powerful question in that the pastor has brought out. And it, I thought as you were talking back in 1960s, our household had one record player. And Lily Mae was not going to have Mom's Mabley's album.
Okay.
Or Red Fox's album.
Okay.
They weren't going to be up in there. So if I wanted to hear it, even if I wanted to, I was going to have to find somebody that I knew that I could go by the house, which I had to ask Mom if I could go.
Right.
And I look at how different that is today, because that cell phone has it all.
Right.
It's got everything. Yeah. And Junior could be anywhere. And you would never know that he's listening or that he believes. So I would say that the black church today, in order to try to guide and address and comfort youth, there's got to be a bigger dialogue effort where young people can come and feel comfortable and speak. And instead of listening to thug life stuff per se, it can be out there. My youngest son and oldest son say to me, it's an art form, and I buy that to a point. But there needs to be an institution or a group that is trying to get to the root of what's troubling our youth, and then setting forth what they believe is a positive path to get to another bracket.
Terry, this is what I struggle with, and as not just as a pastor, but as a parent. When I see my son puts an earring over the eyebrow, and then he had what I thought was earrings and stuff down here, and I'm looking at him, and in my mind it projects a certain image. Okay, and I was talking to my wife, and I'm so old school, and I had him take that stuff off because, I was projecting the image. If I'm your employer and you coming to me for a job, how am I going to look at you? And then I'm a black man, and to me it projects a certain image. And have I become so biased now, in my viewpoint of that I see that as more thuggish, where do young people today see it more as their expression of their own culture and times?
Absolutely, both of them.
Okay.
Absolutely, both of them. First of all, just like you give your son the other side of what a pierced chin would do for him.
Right.
This could poison your whole history of trying to get a job or poison your inner system. When you give a child, because they are kids, we just look at them as adults because the crazy stuff that they do is only a grown-up crazy person would do. But when you give them another perspective of what these things will do, not for you, but against you, when you give them another perspective of that, then you done your job. I'm telling you, I'm showing you what the outcome of this will be. Now you can go ahead and pierce your chin, and if it falls off, you're still not an ugly child. You're just a child with no chin.
Right.
Because you didn't listen to me. That's the same as gangster rap music. If we could put the information out there for these kids to know that today's drug seller is tomorrow's drug user. They don't get that. They don't get that information when we do not give it to them.
Right.
Today's seller is tomorrow's user. Okay, You want to be a gangster rapper. Okay, go show the other side of what a gangster rapper's lifestyle is. It's not that he wants you nowhere near him, because he'll tell you. And if you video him as he lives his life, I don't live that lifestyle. I just rap about it.
Right.
I got bodyguards to keep people like you away from me. I don't live that lifestyle.
Right.
So if these kids saw the other side of, it's two sides to everything.
Right.
Yes or no, up and down, in and out, all of it. If the kids if they got the information of the other side, maybe that would influence them more so than the negative side.
Annette, is this art form of rapping, gangster rap, what is this impact on young women? Are we seeing it impact also young women in how they perceive themselves, how they behave, how they act? Your experience, what do you think?
I think another good question. Just being in the educational arena and able to teach, high school students, you see that, the women, the young women to me have it rough, because on some ends, the behavior of the young men, that they may be dating or come in contact with, they have to kind of contend with, these young men are a little more aggressive. And I just think sometimes the young women, they want to be with a young man that's seems like he's cool and he's a bad person and everybody is fearful of him. Women like that kind of protection.
So they like that, huh?
Protection piece. But just like Terry said, it's two sides to every story. You don't want to, get involved with a gentleman that has that type of aggressive behavior. They exploit that in those videos, like John was saying. These women, they watch these videos all day long. They listen to this music all the time. It's just always a negative piece in the music. I never hear anything that's wonderful or roses or anything like that. It's just, we got to get this money, we got to do this, we got to rob the next person, we got to beat up the next person. It's all about, like, it's a self-centered type of music industry. It's all about that particular rapper or that artist. And you hear some of the rappers say, that's not really me. It's just an image. That's the key word, an image. But how do we get that across to our young people, that this is an image? This doesn't mean you take upon this image as well, because they're living, they got lots of money, they living good, they get to have whatever they want, and you're just, just a regular person out in the society every day trying to make a living. So I just think the women have it hard, because the men, can be a little disrespectful, and they feel like, that's cool though, I don't mind it.
I'm going to kind of open this up, because the question that I have, has rap music or gangster rap influenced what we see as far as the gun violence? Has it influenced? Does it influence individuals who may be beefing with one another, and guns becomes the issue or the method in which they settle the beef? What do you think? I seen you smile over there, Terry.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then the difference between not owning a weapon and owning a weapon, a person sees the power that a person that owns a weapon has without no control. I'm talking about in a controlled environment. There's a difference between having a weapon and not. Like a policeman, he's in a controlled environment. He's only authorized to use his weapon at a particular time.
Right.
In an uncontrolled environment, the power that a weapon gives you over other people who do not have a weapon, it most definitely it has an influence over you that it takes you away from reality. It takes you to another level of a superpower. You're a super in your environment, in the environment that you're in right then and there. But I'm going to say this. it's not the weapon. It's the person.
So what's influencing the person to have that mindset that you just talked about, who has the weapon now, but how do we? Because I think you're right. But what is influencing the mindset?
If I growed up in an uncontrolled environment and then I possess a weapon, what am I, just a out of control person with a weapon?
Right.
That's the difference.
Okay.
But if you are growing up in a household that you are taught to respect the weapon, your mindset is different. So these kids go out in the streets now and they get into it at school. I know he's going to get a gun.
Right, right.
I'm scared that he's going to shoot me.
Right.
So I'm going to get one.
Right.
And then there's no compromise in there's nobody like me to come in and say, hey, man, hold it. This is what a weapon will do to you, your future, his family's future, our whole generational future. They don't have people to come into their lives or that's in their lives to explain this, the continuation of what you're about to do with this weapon. This is what we need. We need to, and how we got the breakdown of discommunication with our people, hey, it is ridiculously irresponsible on our part. Who's to say they'll tell me all day, oh man, it ain't nothing you can do. You know, it ain't gonna make a difference anyway. You don't know that until you try.
Right.
And then if I have influence over just one person, he might have influence over 10 people that he know.
Right.
And then so and so. So you can make a difference if you say something.
What is amazing to me is that we're talking about, we're coming out of the 60s during the civil rights era. So now we're looking at mostly the grandchildren and the great-great-grandchildren and the great-great-grandchildren of the civil rights era. And sometimes I wonder what happened. What happened that by the 1980s, we saw this explosion of drug trafficking, in urban areas more so, because, I grew up in a small town, Jeffersonville. We didn't see much of that like you did when you went across the bridge, in Louisville, Kentucky. It was a whole different world over there. And where, my brother was killed, in the mid-1970s, And the question become, and I think Terry raised it, what has happened and what has been lost since the civil rights era? John, you are Annette addressed that. How did we end up going down this path, and what was lost that has gotten us to the place where we are now? That homicide is the leading cause of death for black men in America ages 1 to 44. Just reflect on that. The leading cause of death for black men, the age from 1 year old to now 44 years old in this country.
I mean, that's a tough question. I just think a lot of it has to do with the morals and the values of our of the parents. The parents were able to live in to come up in an era where everything is social media, like you just said, and those particular morals and values have kind of depleted. As John alluded, we didn't have cell phones and all this audio stuff on our phones. We didn't have it at our house. Our parents didn't allow that. But the particular generations, from the last couple of generations, they've been exposed to the media. They've been exposed to social things out in the communities, and they pretty much have been emulating it. And like Terry said, what you see is what you get. And our parenting skills has just really tremendously went downhill. Our parents are just not educating our kids. They're not teaching our kids. They're not disciplining them. They're allowing schools and other places to do those particular things. And, you run into problems like that. Even when you try to discipline a child, there's different belief systems out there. So I just think the social media has just a really There's a movie out now that everyone is really talking about, Sinners. And it's all geared towards music in that whole movie. It's the music, the feeling of the music and the vibes brought this particular group of people together only for destruction to happen. Because that's what happened at the end of the,
Yeah, we for John, Thomas, we used to do Club Hope at Barnes, United Methodist Church on Friday nights. And in the green room used to be the area where the kids would dance. So, they had the gym where they play basketball. In the fellowship hall, we had food there so they could come and eat, pizza and hot dogs and all that stuff. So they would come and eat. Upstairs, we had a video game area where now the boxing is. But there was some music that they would play, some songs that would just amp those kids up. They would they would get amped up and y'all, they became almost uncontrollable when they got the dance and they was amped up. So we had a list of music that they could no longer play because it got them kids so amped up that we started having trouble with them, on the inside. And then when they left Club Hope, at 10 o'clock, they went through the neighborhood, creating havoc. So they was acting out, yeah. So we ended up having to chaperone the kids, home because they was acting out and so we decided that there were certain songs that we would no longer allow the DJ to play because it was hyping these kids up, boy. Okay, John,
that is interesting.
This whole thing, John, from the civil rights era to now,
I think my view, having taught school as Annette and Terry has taught in his own way, the disintegration of black families that probably began in earnest in the 60s has been the downfall of it has been, I don't want to say it's been the downfall, it's been a pain in black culture that has led to rules being broken. In the 40s and 50s, I believe, especially from the migration coming up from the South to the North and to the West, black families felt that they wanted their children to be better off in this world than they were. And they were getting them ready. You go to school, you listen to that teacher's important. You go to church, you listen to that preacher. It changed with the disintegration of the black families. And part of that could have been that as we progressed, because there's a black middle class around 47%,
right,
a black Hispanic middle class of about 48%, and a white middle class of about 52%. Those individuals have followed either getting good education, good direction from home, and they have gone to another bracket. What happened to those of us who are in maybe an area where the schools aren't that good? We don't have family that is pushing us or getting us into a position. And a lot of it may be that manufacturing and jobs changed. That we went from where we could leave high school and go and work and make middle class money to now there's another layer. You've got to now go to Ivy Tech or some skill program and get a certificate that then says you can do something where you can do plumbing or air conditioning or welding, where you can make middle class money. As that becomes more and more of an obstacle, I think families have, especially black families, have broken up. And so you are struggling with children that have no guidance to how to get to the next bracket. And then you've got the media and social networks and music that says you don't have to get to the next, you don't have to go to school and get skilled up. You can do this thug life. Mm-hmm. and it's glorified. It's lifted up, and it's exciting, and it's fun. For a while, my students would tell me, well, Hall, I ain't got to work 40 hours a week. You the sucker. You working 40 hours a week. Terry, no, I'm telling the truth. I got more money than you, Hall. And so that, and so the gang culture, which became prominent, 70s on up. Yeah. You had territory and disputes. When I was with the city in Goldsmith, 1998 was the highest homicide rate in Indianapolis up until now. It's gone. And there was a new crack coming out of the West Coast. I think it was supposed to be flavored crack or whatever. Am I close?
I have no idea.
All right.
But on that anyway.
Yeah. But then they were battling over territory.
Right.
And added to that now with the gang culture is interpersonal disputes, beefs, and just becoming empowered because you can carry a gun. That has lifted up the homicide rate, in my opinion, to where it's uncontrollable. Yep. Now, intervention from groups like 10 Point, and there are many neighborhood groups that are working to kind of disperse that. But until we can address young children getting another message other than what's on social media, it's going to continue.
Yeah, Terry.
If y'all haven't noticed how passionate I am about this and the generational people of my people, if nobody has noticed that I'm real passionate about this, when you take a child in a household for Christmas, the first thing you buy your young son is a gun. He learns from a young age to freely shoot anything that he wants to and get away with it. It's acceptable in my household to pow, 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 pow. I don't even let no young men around me even possess a toy gun.
Right. That's the way my parents were.
And then, have we not been paying attention when they said Generation X will exist? Have we not been paying attention that this is Generation X? They are so freely about killing. They have no passion about human life no more. Right. I kill and I get away with it. Society and the other entities that is involved in this, society will they'll let you kill because we're getting rid of two of them. We sending you to the penitentiary and you just got rid of one for me.
Right.
So we allow this to happen all the way up until, well, dang, when did they take that gun and turn it on us? Now we got to do something about guns. Now you got a problem with it because they are out of control with it.
Right.
If we're not paying attention to Generation X and then how we got to Generation X, when they started talking about Generation X, where did y'all come up with this idea that we're going to have a generation of kids that's going to be thoughtless, dangerous? Where did y'all get this at? Somebody had to push this narrative. So don't get it mixed up that it's just, popped out the blue that we got a generation of kids that just, where did y'all get this narrative at? When you start pumping them with, prescription meds, you can look out there on the bus stop right now, man, and everybody out there is either high on illegal drugs or legal drugs.
Right.
We got a drunk society, man, and then we drunk too. Because we trying to numb ourselves from what we are faced with.
Right. That's true. And one of the things you said is true. Moynihan predicted this in the 1960s.
In the 1960s.
Yeah, in 1960s. Yeah, he predicted that if the rate of single parent households continued to rise in the black community, it was going to produce generations of predators in the 1960s. He predicted. And who he predicted would be the predators were young black men.
Young black men. I'd like to say
And
one
we
more thing,
pounced
too,
on
Pastor.
Yes. Go
I'd
ahead.
like to say one more thing, too. And as far as any young black men out there that's listening to me right now, hey, man, it's almost became embarrassing to say that I am a black man in America to this day, the way I disrespect all of y'all are my women. Yeah. Y'all carried America on y'all shoulders for 400 years. And the reason why the other nationality don't respect y'all, they look at us. Hell, if they don't respect, excuse my language, if they don't respect their women, why should we?
Exactly.
So it is, man, we have to grow up and become the people, man, that everybody expects for us to be. Strong black men in the world.
This has been a great conversation today. I'm looking, and boy, we have certainly run out of time. This conversation about what has been the impact of gangster rap music on the black community, and has it led to the rise in black-on-black violence that we have seen over the last 6 decades in America. Certainly, we're going to continue this conversation in our community, and we want to talk about the next time, what are the solutions to it? You know, we have kind of talked about what the problems are, the challenges that we face. We're going to come back and do part 2 of this, where we're going to focus on what are the solutions. Are there any solutions to help turn this issue around? This has been Reverend Charles Harrison, and thank you so much for joining me today on Real Talk as we talked about the real issues that affect this city, Indianapolis, and across the country. I want to thank Annette Johnson, trustee of Pike Township, John Hall, and Terry Cameron for joining me today in this conversation. And we hope that you have been enlightened by this conversation, and it will cause you to have conversations with yourself and with others about how can we address this issue that we are facing, in this country when we see the disproportionate amount of violence that is impacting communities of color. What is the role of rap music? Is it one of just many contributors to black-on-black violence, or has it played a greater role in what we're seeing today? This is Reverend Harrison. I want to thank you so much for joining me today and all of my guests in this conversation on Real Talk. I hope that you have a blessed and an awesome day. Peace.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.